you have Denzinger, as you know, this is the sources of Catholic dogma, so everybody should be familiar with this book, especially if you're Roman Catholic. No, contrary to the Kurgan, this is not a man named Ludwig Denzinger, and it's not a guy's opinion. It's just the collection of dogmas according to the Roman Catholic Church, meaning what documents the Roman See has approved for universal magisterial acceptance. And yes, this does constitute the ordinary magisterial teaching. Now, in Denzinger 1578, we have the condemnation of the Jansenist argument. This is from a document called Auctorum Fidei of Pius VI. And he's one of the post-Tridentine popes who dealt with Jansenists who wanted there to be the Mass done a certain way. I think they even wanted vernacular liturgies. And the Jansenists said, well, if we deem that the Roman See has a bad discipline or liturgical practice, we can legitimately rebel against that. Exact same argument of the Society of St. Pius X. And this proposition number 78, is condemned. So it's a condemned proposition to say that the Roman See can hand down bad disciplines, juridical decisions, or liturgical decisions. The rites are included under this. Now, that's not the only place where we find this. We can go over to Vatican I. And in Vatican I, we've got 3 places under the rulership of Pius IX. This is Denzinger 1683, Denzinger 1792, and Denzinger 1698. And these specify that you must follow, if you're a theologian or even a person not part of the Roman Curia who's disagreeing with Rome, you must follow the decisions of the Roman Pontiff and his see and his congregations in any of their disciplinary, juridical, and liturgical decisions. So you don't have the right to say, this is specifying, you don't have the right to say, well, I've decided that when Rome said that was not part of the extraordinary infallible magisterium, so I'm not going to follow it. All this does is make you a Protestant with the papal documents. That's it, right? I'm going to pick and choose. I'll read through here. Oh, I don't like that one. I like that one. And if we go over to CASTI CONNUBII, which is, again, one of the famous papal encyclicals of Pius XII, if you look at paragraph number 104 in CASTI CONNUBII, this is actually explicitly condemned, again, not just in the Vatican II documents, but in the famous encyclical of Pius XII, that you do not have the right to say, I am only going to follow what I deem as extraordinary teaching. So this gets into the distinction between extraordinary magisterium, which is the Pope defining things from the Roman See for the entire church, or the ordinary universal magisterium, which is the church's teaching of all time for the whole church in all places, anything that she's always taught anywhere and in every place. Now, there is no list, by the way, of what the ordinary universal magisterium is. Again, it's not a coherent, clear principle. That's why you get the canon law, canon theologians who will sit there and give you 10-page lists of how you're supposed to figure out and determine what the different strata are. We've covered that many times. But regardless,
wait a minute. I thought this was papacism was supposed to make all this easy.
Makes it clear for the layperson. But in CASTI CONNUBII 104, we read, as I said, that it is not the duty or power of the individual private judgment of the Christian and of his human reason to decide what things he's going to believe that are put forth and decreed by the Roman See. And it's not you can't limit that to what you think is just the extraordinary. So again, the universal ordinary magisterium, according to Vatican I, is clearly included under the promise of the charism of Peter. So you have to follow the Roman See in all of its decisions. And the only time that you can reject it is if it's not part of the universal magisterium or the Pope's private opinion. But again, there's no way for actually a list of when or where that is. It's vague things like what we always taught and faith and morals. Okay, well, faith and morals can conceivably encompass anything within the Christian tradition, right? So it's intentionally kind of vague because then it allows for the individual Catholics from a practical perspective to make Catholicism any wide range of things, from Urban II calling crusades to Mother Teresa, saving, street people. So it's whatever, or praying in mosques, right? It leaves it so open and so vague,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time telling you that you have to follow Vatican I in the way that it says what dogma is, right? And so the point of all that is just to say that the whole position of the Society of St. Pius X is itself untenable and schismatic on its own grounds, because it results in them deciding that they will not accept the universal ordinary magisterial teaching, which includes the living papacy, includes the living magisterium. So in other words, you can't just say, well, I'll go back to this pope. No, it's a living succession. You can't reject the last 60, 70 years of what the papacy has taught. That's ludicrous, and obviously clearly flies in the face of Vatican I. So it's not just a matter of which documents, it's, are you following the living pontiff and successor of Peter, you see? So all of these specious arguments that the Society of St. Pius X tries to use falls apart when we look at the fact that Vatican I tells, no, you can't reject the universal ordinary magisterial teaching. By the way, you don't even have the ability to publicly reject just the ordinary teaching. In fact, classic Catholic moral theology teaches that even the fallible ordinary magisterial teaching must be submitted to with docility. So even though you can privately think that it's wrong, you don't have to agree with it. Maybe your bishop says this on that, and you disagree with him. That's allowable in Catholic theology. But the problem is that you don't have the right to publicly oppose and disagree with the church, right? That's not really the ethos of Roman Catholicism, right? And that's why there's always this dialectic. And yeah, they're going to appeal to, well, there's been many saints in the church who fought, corrupt hierarchs and who did this and that. Yeah, but prior to Vatican I, you might have been able to have that opinion. Vatican I has settled the issue. The Roman See cannot fail. It does not defect. And that includes his universal ordinary magisterial teachings, which includes the liturgical rites and decisions that the Roman See makes. Clear illustration of this is in the fact that, for example, when I was attending the Latin Mass, the SSPX, back in, say, 2005 or 6, it was a hot topic that many of us thought John Paul II is going to be canonized. Well, John Paul II at that time, right, was still Pope, and was not, I think that was around the time he was still Pope. I don't remember the exact year that Benedict came in. I don't know if it was 2007, 8, somewhere in there. But at that time, John Paul, it looked like, right, there was a large move to have his canonization. And I remember explicitly, I had a big discussion with the SSPX priest that I attended at that time, Father Gregory Post, by the way. That's all true. He's since passed away. But Father Gregory Post made it very clear that Rome will never canonize John Paul II. It's an impossibility because they cannot canonize heretics. Well, I told him at the time, they're not just going to canonize John Paul II. They're going to canonize Paul VI, John the 23rd. They're all going to get canonized. That will be part of the process of making it undeniable that you have to accept Vatican II. Now, at that time, the SSPX was constantly debating, do we have to accept the canonizations of popes? Well, you do. I'm sorry. They're part of the ordinary magisterial teaching. The doctors of the Roman Catholic Church say that canonizations, Alphonsus Liguori says that they're part of the universal ordinary magisterial teaching. So they're infallible. You have to accept those. You can't just think how silly it would be to sit here as a Roman Catholic and say, well, if I can reject those canonizations, I can start rejecting them all. I can go back. I don't accept Augustine's canonization. I don't accept Jerome. You see how silly this would be if in the Roman Catholic system you could doubt and reject canonizations. So the canonizations of the Vatican II popes is a further illustration of the fact you do not have a right as a Roman Catholic to reject Vatican II. It is not a merely pastoral council that is not magisterial. You just saw in these other statements and these other documents, right? It's clear that the Roman pontiff, especially at Vatican I, determines what tradition is, okay? If you read Vatican I, especially Session 4, and thank you, shout out to Orthodoxy Chlor Queen for that $100 fat super chat there, where he notes that Session 4 of Vatican I, sections 3 and 4, says very clearly that it is the Pope together, or excuse me, not together, not with the cardinals, not with the rest of the church, who determines what tradition is. No one judges the Holy See. You don't tell the Pope what tradition is. The Pope, in his office as successor to Peter, determines what the true sense of tradition is. He is the deposit keeper, right? The key holder. He's the one who transmits, as the universal pastor and teacher, the faith. So he is the living embodiment also of tradition. That's clearly the sense that Vatican I has. And by the way, if you disagree with that, that's actually excommunicated. You're excommunicated if you reject that or disagree with that in the decrees of Vatican I. So the point is that both things are true. Quo primum does define the Roman Missal at Trent to be in perpetuity. That is the Latin Mass. But because the Pope is above tradition, he's not bound by it. He determines and interprets it. You don't interpret it for him and tell him what he has to do. No man can judge the First See in these matters. Then it's also true that the Roman Pontiff can decree a new liturgy. He can do what happens at Vatican II, because Vatican I gives him that right and that authority to determine these matters. So it's not a matter of making the system work. It's a matter of realizing that this system is inherent and fraught with contradictions. To the schism of the movement of Lefebvre, that is the SSPX. So what this shows is that Francis clearly still considers the SSPX in schism. Every SSPX person, of course, rejects this and does not accept that they are in schism. They don't care that Rome continues to hold them in that status. And for them, it's like, well, but we still honor and commune with the Roman See and the Pope in the liturgy, right? Francis is still mentioned in the Mass of the SSPX. But it's not you doing that determines your canonical status or communion with Rome. It's what Rome says. And you'll notice very clearly, again, that this is because of the schism. So they are in schism. It's not going to work to say, well, but we had all these meetings. Yeah, but the meetings don't matter if you don't accept Vatican II. Again, that's why there's an FSSP.
You know, Jay, all of those arguments you made, they're cool, but you don't have the keys, man. So...
Well, let's keep in mind, too, that one of the fallbacks that Roman Catholics have is, well, if I hunker down, I'll just wait for the based Pope. Hopefully, God will save us with a miraculous election of a based Pope. Maybe Cardinal, who's that? The brother man, the black dude. I forget his name. Cardinal what?
Sarah, who resigned.
Right. It's not going to be him. And by the way, Francis has been stacking the cardinalate with more of his own. So do not, that is a fool's hope there. You're hoping on something.
And if you get that based Pope with those Francis cardinals, then there's something that's going on. Something's up. It's actually way worse. It's way more worrying if that happens, I think.
Can you imagine? So, and by the way, we've seen actually a progression. I mean, Francis has. So, if you know kind of the history of the post-Vatican II, the theological developments and the papacy, and if you read a lot of those encyclicals, you know that Francis is. I mean, John Paul took it far, right? I mean, he took it farther than anybody before him had. He was a light year leap in terms of things that nobody had ever seen before, with the Assisi gatherings, other world religions coming and praying in Roman Catholic churches, covering up the altar and crosses to respect voodoo practitioners. I'm not joking, by the way. Praying in mosques. John Paul did stuff nobody had ever seen before. And then, Benedict was this kind of like bureaucratic rollback. I don't actually believe Benedict was actually a conservative. You read his books. I mean, he's just as modernist as any of the others. I've read about 6 of Benedict's books. And so it gave the appearance of like a little bit of a rollback. And then you just take you take 10 steps forward, a little bit of a rollback, 2 steps back, and then you take another 10 steps forward. So that's how this bureaucratic Vaticanese works, is that you do this 2-step, right? And so, but I don't think that they're going to get a little bit of a rollback. They might after the time of Francis, but I wouldn't bet on it. And even if you do, can you imagine the next stage after Francis, what you're going to get? I mean, Francis took it to the light year level beyond what John Paul II had done. I mean, he's just done wild stuff.